In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Liberty First Foundation. Tonight, I am graced to be able to interview Loren Culp. Loren is running for governor for the state of Washington in the coming election. And with that, Loren, could you go ahead and give people a little bit of background about your platform and why you decided to run for governor?
Absolutely. It's great to be with you, Michael, and thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm not running for political office because I dreamed of being a politician. You know, that was never a goal of mine in life.
Right.
I'm a lifelong Washingtonian. I've lived here all my life except for 4 years in the military. But and just a little background. You know, I was born and raised in a small farming community in northwestern Washington, and joined the military at the age of 19. And I served 4 years with the 101st Airborne Division and the 2nd Infantry Division. I went to drill sergeant school, became a sergeant, trained civilians into soldiers. And after 4 years, my wife and I decided that we would leave the military. We had 2 little kids at the time. And with 101st Airborne, you spend a lot of time away from home. So
I'm sure you do. Thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. So after the military, I went into construction. And before the military, though, when I was a little kid, my dad was a deputy sheriff in Jefferson County, Washington. And I'd always thought that I was going to be in law enforcement, but life kind of took me in a different direction. So after the military, I went into construction over by the state capitol in the Olympia area. Mm-hmm. And after a few years, I started my own construction business. I started that from nothing and built it up to having, multiple crews and vehicles running all over the state doing jobs. And after 21 years, I sold that business to my youngest son and realized my childhood dream of becoming a police officer. Because in a small town where we're from, a police officer job opened. So I applied for it at the age of 49, believe it or not. Went through the academy, became a police officer, and I've been a narcotics officer, patrol officer, canine officer.
Right.
And currently I'm the chief of police in Republic, Washington, and have been for the last 4 years. But during my tenure as the chief of police, I've always been a strong believer in our constitutional guaranteed rights, right? Our rights come from our creator. They're guaranteed to us by the Constitution.
Yes.
And in the military and as a police officer, I took an oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution of both the state of Washington and the federal Constitution. So, and I took that oath very seriously. Well, in 2018, a law passed in this state. It was called Initiative 1639.
Yes.
And it passed by a narrow margin. And that law did a couple different things. I mean, it's 30 pages of garbage. But the reason that I believe it passed is because our left-wing attorney general, who wrote the title, wrote school and gun safety. Right. But most people didn't read the 30 pages of garbage that's inside of it. So it passed. But inside of that, it would make potential felons out of otherwise law-abiding citizens.
Right.
If a person broke into your home and stole a firearm and then went out and committed a crime for that, you could be charged with up to a felony for what that criminal did. And it also barred people 18 to 21 years old from purchasing a semi-automatic rifle, even a semi-automatic 10-22 that most kids learn how to shoot with. They could not buy them. If they already own one, they could not leave their property with it. Mm-hmm. And that is a huge violation of their constitutional rights. Right. I served in the military starting at the age of 19. Many people start serving in the military at 17 or 18. And you're going to tell them when they come home on leave that they can't go buy a semi-automatic 10-22 rifle. Right. That's a huge violation of their constitutional rights. So the next day after that passed, I was asked by citizens that I serve in Republic if I was going to start arresting 18 to 21-year-olds who I saw with a semi-automatic rifle. And my answer was no. I will not do that. It's a violation of their constitutional rights. And I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. So I got asked that same question by several people that day. So I went to our social media page and I wrote on there that as long as I'm the chief of police, no officer working under me will violate anyone's constitutional rights, period. And that got a lot of likes and a lot of shares. And the next day, I wrote up a city ordinance. And law enforcement is part of the executive branch. We cannot make law. But I wrote it up and I sent it by email to the city council and to the mayor. And I suggested that they enact this and make the city of Republic, Washington, a Second Amendment sanctuary city.
Right.
So that little did I know, that went viral because I not only emailed it to this council and the mayor, I posted it on our Facebook page. And that got shared all around the world because I know that eventually we got emails from people in Australia and Great Britain, in support saying, don't give up your rights, stick with it. We know what happens when you give up your guns, you don't get them back. So that created a huge media storm for the small town of Republic, Washington, a population of 1,100 people.
Right.
And the media started swarming to Republic. We had Fox News reporter with a camera crew came here along with all our local media. And all of a sudden I'm doing media interviews and I'm on the national news, first on the Shannon Bream show on Fox. And then I was invited to speak on the Fox and Friends show. And then the next week I was on Tucker Carlson.
Right.
So because of my stance, I guess I was the first person in the nation to suggest we have a Second Amendment sanctuary city, because the left was always talking about having sanctuaries for illegal criminals. And so I kind of turned that on its head, I guess, and that drew a lot of attention. But I thought that there would be all kinds of police chiefs and sheriffs across this state standing up and saying the same thing. I'm not going to enforce this. I'm going to uphold my oath of office. But that didn't happen at first. And the reason that I thought that it didn't happen is because we're all pretty much a product of public school system. And we're not taught about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and what the founders went through to get us a free nation.
Right.
And so I decided that I needed to write a book and get the thoughts and the reasons and the authority by which I made that stand into book form, get it out to the public so that they would be educated, and get it to public servants around the state so they would make a stand. And so I wrote that book in the month of December of 2018, and it got published and was out to the public on Amazon and bookstores on President's Day of 2019.
Right.
And it shot to number 1 on Amazon in 3 different categories. It was the number 1 book on the Hot 100 New Books list for over 3 weeks, which was huge. I'm just a small town guy. I've never written a book before in my life. So it was amazing. But that ended up causing well over half of the sheriffs in our state to come out and make a stand and say that they will not violate citizens' rights. They will not enforce that law.
Right.
That caused an uproar with our liberal governor and the attorney general, and they were writing letters to us telling us if we don't enforce it, they're going to send in the state troopers to investigate all kinds of things, and my reaction was a big middle finger to them. It's like, go ahead. The Washington State Constitution, many of your viewers might not be from Washington, but the Washington State Constitution is even more explicit than the Second Amendment, believe it or not.
It is.
It's Article 1, Section 24 says that the right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired. Period. That's the end of it. There's nothing for interpretation there.
No.
And so I welcome them doing enforcement action against me. So that led me, the book and getting the book out led to invitations from Republican Party Lincoln Day dinners to come and speak, and to go to gun shows and sportsman shows and rallies and be a speaker. And so every weekend when I was off, I was traveling somewhere in Washington State, speaking to groups. And throughout the spring and into summer, the groups grew larger and larger. More people read my book, more people wanted to come out and hear me speak. And eventually people started asking me to please run for governor, because the election was coming up. Right. And at first I just kind of, laughed it off, didn't really take it serious. But the bigger the crowds got and the more people the more citizens asked me to please run for governor, I started taking it serious.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got 2 sons and 7 grandkids that live in this state. And my wife and I sat down in July and talked about it. And, I'm 59 years old now. And
Right.
if I don't run and give it my best shot, because I looked around and I didn't see anyone who I could trust to stand up for citizens' rights.
Right.
And so if I don't do this now, when people are asking me to, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. And so last July, I announced that I was running for governor.
Okay.
That's how I got to running for governor.
You actually triggered our radar. I don't know how much you knew or not before I talked to you earlier. But the Liberty First Foundation was actually very active in opposing I-1639 and also in working behind the scenes to try to get various town councils, city councils, and so forth to stand in opposition to 1639 after it did pass. Using the same proofs that you just mentioned and what you mentioned in your book. Unfortunately, I have not had a chance to read your book. It is on my reading list. I just haven't had a chance to get to it.
Excellent. Yeah, the title of the book is American Cop.
Right.
And it's available on Amazon. You can even download it on Audible if people want to listen to it in their car or whatever instead of read it. But yeah.
And we are a civil rights organization, and we have a focus on the Second Amendment because without that, all of our other rights are literally gone at any point in time. And with some of the actions that are being taken today, we're seeing that our rights to be able to protect our other rights are being further and further infringed upon.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate you taking a stand for the Second Amendment, and I appreciate you throwing your hat in the ring for the office of governor. Mm-hmm. We need more people that are out there working to restore the Constitution. We are way too far away from it today.
Absolutely. Yep. And we're getting farther and farther every day.
Right. Now, earlier I talked to you a little bit about what you would do to the organizations that violated literally federal law under Title 18 U.S. 241, conspiracy for the deprivation of rights. And you gave me a very interesting answer about what the governor could and could not do in those instances. I'd like you to repeat that for our viewers so that they kind of understand if your hands are tied, how they're tied, and what you can and can't do along those lines.
Yeah, definitely. In the state of Washington, it's very different on the national scene, as far as the U.S. government goes, and a lot of other states. But in Washington, the governor does not appoint the attorney general, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. The governor doesn't appoint the secretary of education. The governor doesn't appoint the head of the Department of Fish and Wildlife. The attorney general and the commissioner of public lands. All of those, except for the head of the Department of Fish and Wildlife, are separately elected positions.
Okay.
So there's statewide race. People get elected to that. They're not appointed by the governor, believe it or not. Okay. And the Department of Fish and Wildlife, the head of that is appointed by the commission that oversees the Department of Fish and Wildlife. The governor does appoint people to that, but as far as the attorney general and a couple others, no, the governor has no power to appoint those people or to relieve them of their duty.
Okay.
But I would definitely, we have a darn good attorney general as far as the U.S. attorney general. And that would be definitely something to look into, is seeing if, because it's federal law.
Well, it is. Okay. And that was going to be my other point. Okay. Being as you were, are you still acting chief, or are you still chief of police now?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes.
So being chief of police, that actually gives you the authority um, to enforce every law that's out there on the books, whether it be a federal law all the way down to city ordinances. Now, you may not necessarily get to make a disposition on it or whatever, but you have the authority to enforce those laws within your jurisdiction. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize or understand, that our lowest echelon, typically in a lot of areas, that is your constitutional sheriffs, have the ultimate authority in what laws are enforced and what laws aren't within their jurisdictions. You speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, the sheriff is the supreme law enforcement officer in their respective counties. They have the authority to tell the state or federal government that what will and will not be enforced, and whether they're going to even be active in that county, and that they will notify the sheriff if they're going to be doing anything in the county. He's the supreme law enforcement officer there. And it's been quite a few years ago, there was a constitutional sheriff who stood up to the federal government, and showed them who was actually in charge of law enforcement in his county. And his name's Sheriff Richard Mack. Mm-hmm. And back in the 90s, during the Clinton administration, the Brady bill was passed, and the federal government came in and tried to tell the local sheriffs, what they were going to do and how they were going to do it as far as the Brady law goes. And Sheriff Richard Mack said, I don't think so. I took an oath and I'm not going to break it and violate citizens' constitutional rights no matter what you say. And they tried to force him to do it. Well, he sued the federal government. This was back in the 90s in the Clinton administration. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and he won, believe it or not. And that ruling reinforced the sheriff's position as a supreme law enforcement officer. And I would, just as a side note, I was honored to be and Sheriff Richard Mack is now the president of the national organization called the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. People can look that up online. But I was honored last year to be invited there because of my stance against this anti-constitutional gun law. I was invited there, and I was awarded at their national convention the Police Chief of the Decade Award, which was very nice. Mm-hmm. But that's what we need. We need more people who are either in appointed positions like a chief of police like me, or elected sheriffs, or any elected public servant. From the governor on down, and president, congressmen, senators. We need more people in those positions that understand their oath of office and they understand their responsibility. And the first responsibility of government, you can look in the Declaration of Independence, and it tells us that governments were instituted to protect citizens' rights. And so with that in mind, we need more people like that understand the role of a public servant and the role of our government. And that is the main thing, to protect citizens' rights. So
I absolutely agree. Okay. And a lot of people today do not understand what the role of government is. They believe that government is nothing more than somebody to fix their problems. And
a nanny state is what we end up with, like we have here in Washington right now.
And I'm of the opinion, and my organization's of the opinion, that we need to quit looking to the government for solutions. We need to start working on community-based solutions, because communities are able to find solutions that work better for that community than the government will ever be able to do.
Absolutely.
As governor, what actions are you going to take to start the restoration of the Constitution?
Remind everyone of what the government's role is. The governor's going to have a pretty big platform, to get on the news and speak to the citizens, and just let them know what the role of government is, and remind them, because we're not getting it in public school. We're not getting that education in public school.
No, we're not.
Hardly at all. That's why, people don't know what their rights are. That's why we lose them. And we end up with a governor that we have right now who is because of this virus is trampling on everybody's constitutional rights,
Right.
and telling everyone that they can't leave their home, they can't peaceably assemble, they can't practice their religion in a church. Those are First Amendment violations.
Right.
And so I will educate the citizens, and once I am governor, I will put pressure on the legislature. Hopefully the citizens of the state can get a more conservative legislature than we have now. But put pressure on them from the governor's office, and the citizens putting pressure on them to get some of these goofy laws overturned.
Good. You actually brought up a very good point. Okay. With the COVID-19 crisis that we are seeing today, it's been very troubling to watch all across this nation.
Mm-hmm.
As executive order after executive order after executive order has been issued. And one of the things that's probably more troubling than anything else is how contrary to the Constitution those executive orders are, and how contrary even a policy or a legislation that's in place that allows a single figure to institute these executive orders, these decrees. What do you think on those?
Yeah, it's definitely sad, and I've seen videos of people getting arrested for nothing more than taking their child to their local community park,
right,
to play on gym equipment.
Mm-hmm.
That's very disturbing to me. These people get elected as a public servant, right? Not a dictator, not a king.
Mm-hmm.
Our governor just the other day made a comment on the news that President Trump was encouraging citizens to be insubordinate when he was saying that he wanted to get our economy going again. And I took issue with that. I did a Facebook Live. If people want to see that, they can go to my Facebook page at Culp for Governor.
Right.
We'll and look at that.
All these links added into the show notes for this.
Okay, good. But I took exception to that, because people that we elect into office, mm-hmm. they are public servants.
Right.
They're in there to run that department, or in the case of the governor, to be the executive officer of the state government and run the state mm-hmm. government, not to run my life and your life and
right.
tell us what we can do, which store can stay open, which one has to close. He came out with a little bit of relief for the citizens of Washington State the other day. He said, you can go golfing now. But for the last 3 weeks, I've had a think tank together, and we've come up with these 24 rules that you have to follow to go golfing. And this is just how idiotic this is. It included not touching the flagpole at the cup, not reaching in the cup to take the ball out. The golf course had to turn the cups upside down so the ball would not go in the hole. They had to remove benches on the golf course. They had to remove trash cans off the golf course. They had to remove ball washers off the golf course. Now, I haven't golfed in maybe 20 years, right? Just did it recreationally a few times. But are you kidding me? Is this America, where you have 24 rules thought up by a think tank from our governor on golfing?
Right. I mean, yeah, it is. And I live in New York State, okay? And we've been hit the hardest of anywhere else in the world by COVID virus. But even then, it's still, I'm sorry, the policies and the decrees and the orders and stuff that are being thrown out there. I'm sorry, I'm responsible for my safety. Okay? And it is also my responsibility to act responsible towards other safety.
Exactly.
Okay? It is not the role of our government to tell me how I can or cannot act. If I act in an irresponsible manner and I do cause somebody harm, by that irresponsible manner, yeah, hold me accountable. Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
Whether it be through
exactly
civil penalties or even legal penalties. Okay. But give me the opportunity and the chance to act in a responsible manner.
the freedom to do
Right.
that.
Exactly.
Yes. And if I was governor when this happened, I would have press conferences with the medical professionals and let the citizens know what's going on, what this is, what can happen to them, and what they should do to protect themselves, their family, and their loved ones, and their friends, and the general public, right? Tell them all of this information from the medical professionals and let them know, the medical professionals are saying if we don't do X, Y, and Z, there could be catastrophic deaths.
Right.
End of conversation.
Well,
The people are smart enough to know once they have the information to make the correct decision for themselves.
absolutely.
Not be ordered around like they're a bunch of kids and their nanny is scolding them.
Well,
it's absolutely unacceptable.
Okay. And right now in our country, on both sides, people are very resistant to government orders. Are you still there, Loren? Okay.
I'm still here. Sorry about that. I blacked out for a second. That's what happens
Oh.
when you live in the mountains and you have internet from a mountaintop.
Hey, I love being on mountaintops. I was on a mountaintop yesterday. In fact, I was on the mountaintop that the 1980 Olympics was skied.
Oh, wow.
So in Lake Placid.
Nice. But here's something just on that subject we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
This will absolutely, it absolutely floored me. Our governor is telling us that we're the only state in the union where you cannot go fishing because our governor shut down fishing and spring turkey hunting. Okay, so what I was getting at, here's just the hypocrisy that's going on. Okay, we can't go outside. We can't go to certain businesses. We can go to others, but not certain ones. Only ones he says we can. Right? Because of our safety, because we might catch this virus, which, by the way, has killed less than 1% of the population. But that's beside the point. Okay, so a couple months ago, before this virus was even in the news, anybody knew anything about it, what did our dear governor do that cares about the citizens and them catching something that might kill them? He signed into law, if you intentionally infect someone with HIV, it was a felony in this state, right?
Right.
2 months ago or 3 months ago, he signed into law reducing the penalty from a felony to a misdemeanor for intentionally infecting someone with HIV. And now he's going to tell me that he cares about our safety and we need to stay home because of a virus that kills less than 1% of the population.
Well,
that's the hypocrisy.
What about releasing all these felons, these child molesters, and sexual offenders, and rapists, murderers back out on the streets?
Yeah, a huge public safety problem, right? I mean, these people are in prison. We're not talking about your local jail where, somebody took a candy bar out of a store. We're talking about felons in state penitentiaries.
Right.
Our state just released about 1,100 of them, and almost had 11,000 of them released. And here's how that started. So a prisoner advocacy group sued the state of Washington. It went before a judge.
Right.
The judge heard the arguments. He said, you need to tell the state, you need to come up with a plan to keep these prisoners as safe as you can from catching this virus. So what did our dear Governor Jay Inslee do? He said, okay, open the gate, let 1,100 of them out. And they're out. And it even went further than that. There were 11,000 of them on the list. And that got challenged. The judge, it went before the state Supreme Court.
Right.
And if we would have had one more judge side with the people wanting prisoners out, we would have had 11,000 plus prisoners released onto the streets.
Wow.
Only by one judge did that not pass.
Yeah. And And here's what really, really does not make any sense on that. What a better place to quarantine. Okay, you've got highly restricted access in and out. Okay, you can actually screen the guards via temperature and so forth to see if they have any symptoms. Okay, those prisoners were actually safer inside of the prison than they are on the outside.
Well, yeah, here's the liberal think on that. Everybody, all you citizens, stay in your homes so you don't get COVID-19. All you prisoners, get out of jail so you don't get COVID-19.
Yeah.
We're living on the planet of the apes. I mean, this is just absolute lunacy.
Yeah. I don't. It boggles the mind, the thinking that's going on with this. It honestly does.
Absolutely. You know, it goes right along with the lunacy of the homeless crisis that I don't know if you guys are experiencing a lot of that in New York, but on the West Coast, it's rampant. Yeah. There are people living in tents all over the place, especially in the bigger cities, but it's reaching out to the smaller communities now too. Mm-hmm. And they're thinking on that. They've decriminalized possession of heroin, which creates a vacuum for drug users.
Right.
They come to these big cities, they camp out on the streets, and they use their heroin and they rob from their neighbors so that they can support their habit. And the state and the municipalities around there don't do anything about it. And that just makes it worse.
Well, it does. Okay. And honestly, that's why I am so much for our communities starting to stand up instead of looking to government for solutions.
Right.
Okay. And that's what we really need as governors across this nation, as city administrators, as mayors, what have you, okay, county supervisors. We need those people to start instilling a community-based solution. If we can get more people like that into those key offices.
Yep.
Not at the state level, because state level, they're going to push, well, government's your friend. Government's the only thing that's going to be able to find those solutions. But at these lower tier offices, get people in position there to say, yes, we need to find the solutions ourselves.
And as Ronald Reagan said back in the 80s, I had the privilege of him being my commander-in-chief when I was in the military.
I did too, as well.
Awesome. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And he said that government is not the solution. Government is the problem.
Right.
And that's so very true. You know, and the more power we can get from the upper echelons of our government, shrink the federal government, shrink state governments, and get the power back in the hands of the people at the more local level, the counties, the cities, right, the easier it is for the citizens to control.
Right. Well, along those lines, okay, everything is built on some type of foundation. Okay. And right now we are trying to make our foundation the federal government. Well, the federal government, honestly, constitutionally, is supposed to have the least amount of power.
Yep.
So you are literally trying to build a pyramid on its point.
Yes.
It's going to collapse. It's going to
very
fall.
top heavy. Yep.
So why not build it on the most solid foundation? The people.
Exactly. That's the way it was originally set up.
Exactly.
You know, the responsibilities of the federal government are very defined and enumerated in the Constitution. Anything outside of that falls under the 9th and 10th Amendment. It's left up to the states and the people.
Right. And anytime they encroach or add more powers to their enumerated powers, that's an usurpation. Okay. Mm-hmm. That is literally, it's a treasonous act against this country. Now, whether or not we're going to follow that up, that's another story. I do think that we need to be holding people accountable when they knowingly violate the Constitution. And that, I think, would go a long way in getting us our Constitution back, is if we hold people accountable.
And in order to get our government, either state, local, or national, back under control, we need good people, good common sense people, that have their thoughts and their beliefs rooted in the Constitution into office.
Exactly.
Yep. Otherwise, we're doomed. We're just going to continue down that slippery slope that we've been on for decades.
Well, that's again where we can actually turn to our lower echelons of government to start holding our higher echelons accountable. Okay. Like, for instance, the Attorney General of the state of Washington. Okay. If there are people at the federal level or even at the county level that are in violation of the Constitution, he needs to be holding them accountable. And there are tools and mechanisms in place to do that. It's just nobody's using them. Right.
And it says right in the Constitution that it is the supreme law of the land.
Right. Right.
And we are so far gone from what our founders intended. The governors, especially our governor, he doesn't even have a clue what's in the Constitution. If he does, he doesn't care. His oath doesn't mean anything. They're just going to do whatever they think they want to do. And so far they're getting away with it, but I think he's got a big surprise coming this November.
Yeah. Well, I wish you luck. And I do hope that we can start turning things around. I do think you have a very good chance in the state of Washington. I know a lot of people were very upset over 1639,
yes,
and how they literally were coerced into passing that legislation.
Yep. Millions of dollars went out in advertising for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And even to the point that it was, even though it was a public referendum, it was contrary to the Constitution, and people were not advised of that.
Correct.
Okay? And the process to change the Constitution was not enacted for the state of Washington. That's very troubling that organizations can do that to a state.
Yep. That's a problem with the initiative process. When you back off and look at the big picture,
right.
We are not a democracy. The United States was set up as a constitutional republic, and it says Article 4, Section 4, that each state is guaranteed a republican form of government.
Right.
And democracy, majority rules, and that's the initiative process. And the majority decides what's going to happen. The minority be damned. Right. That's true democracy, and that's not what we're supposed to have. We're supposed to have equal representation and equal protection under the law, and the law is the Constitution.
Well, exactly. And if you go to a true democracy type system, then you will eventually face tyranny by majority. Okay, and that is worse than tyranny by a king.
Yep.
And that's
and we're taught that in school all the time. I remember at school in the 60s and 70s with teachers pounding in our heads, majority rules on everything. That's not how our government was set up to be.
Well, that's one of the things too with these initiatives to essentially make the Electoral College ineffective.
Okay? Yeah, they're trying to
get rid of it, but make it ineffective. And if I remember right, Washington's a part of that compact between the states to do that. Are you going to withdraw from that compact?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Great.
Yep.
Because that is another thing, is right in the Constitution. It says these states shall not form any compacts without the approval of Congress.
Exactly. That's what our governor is trying to do with the governor of Oregon and Colorado and California. And the reason is they can't think for themselves. They need backup, right? They need the groupthink mentality. So no, that won't be happening. Washington's citizens did not elect a governor to be working in a group with other governors. You know, we elected a governor to run our state government. Right.
And to serve the people of the state of Washington, not to serve the West Coast.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you this afternoon. Is there anything else that you want to let our viewers know?
Yeah, our campaign is going great. There's 5, believe it or not, there's 5 Republicans running for governor. My campaign has double the individual donors than any other candidate. We've got a grassroots on the ground team all across the state, the only campaign that does. And we're not giving our collateral away. You know, most candidates, when they're running for office, they get yard signs or, 4x8 billboard signs, and they just try to get people to take them.
Right.
Well, from day one, I said, we're not doing that. That's not responsible. Right. With the donors' money, to just give these things away, because some people throw them in the trash. Some people throw them in the dumpster. Right. It's not responsible use of money, and I'm going to be the same way with the public's money when I'm governor. So if someone wants a yard sign, it's a $20 donation to the campaign.
Good.
And we have over 7,000 signs out right now, and there's 7 months left till the election. That's huge. The other campaigns can't even give their signs away. We've got signs all over, but we have a great team. We call it the Culp Army. They're all over the state in every county, and it's amazing. This is a true grassroots campaign.
Right.
We haven't spent a dime on advertising, and we are leading the pack on individual donors. And like I said, 7,000 signs and counting. We can't even keep them in stock. It's absolutely amazing. But if anybody wants to check out my website, it's culpforgovernor.com.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook at Culp for Governor. I'm also on Twitter at Loren Culp. People can check it out. We need donations. Obviously, it's going to be an expensive race. The far left machine behind Jay Inslee has already got him millions of dollars.
Well,
so anyone in the United, exactly,
has his hands in it. Because he had his hands in it heavily during 1639.
Yep. So anybody in the United States that's a U.S. citizen can donate at our campaign website, culpforgovernor.com, and I appreciate it. A lot of people are actually in different states because they see what's going on, and there's a chance to really turn this state around and help our union and our nation. So I appreciate any help anybody can give us.
Well, we will get your word out there. We will get your message out there for sure.
Appreciate that.
It's going live. I'm going to ask you to do me one favor is after we get off this interview to email me the links that you want me to include in the show notes, and I will get those put in.
All right.
Sure, so that everybody can find you and just find out more information about you. It's been a pleasure talking with you this evening, and I've really enjoyed this interview. If there's anything else that you want to let anybody know, feel free.
That's about it. I just, I'm thankful that things happened the way they did, and I got this opportunity to spread this message all across the United States, and let people know that it's time to stand up and take our country back and maintain our rights. So
I agree.
Appreciate it.
And that's one of the things that Liberty First Foundation is working on as well. And we need more people like you. They're stepping up to restore our country back to our founders' vision.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If we don't, we're going to lose what little liberties we still have.
Exactly.
So, yes. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. You have a great night.
You too. Take care.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. Infinite rights, when
Politicians take from you and me the very liberties that set us free. So stand up and fight for this democracy. Is you and me. We're the founders, satellite.